Hey guys! Tonight we're stepping into a story that feels like something from a dream or maybe a glitch in the simulation. Imagine a city where doors were never locked. Not because people forgot or because they were reckless, but because they simply didn't have to. You wander down narrow stone alleys lit by lanterns swaying gently on iron hooks. And there they are. Door after door, left wide open, as if trust alone was holding the walls together. Let's be honest, you probably wouldn't last a day here. Your modern instincts would twitch at every creak and whisper. You'd clutch your phone, your wallet, your granola bar. But here, people would just smile at your paranoia and invite you in for soup. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is over there. I love seeing how far this sleepy little history walk travels. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step through the gates of the city just as the sun is giving up its last breath. There are no guards, no shouted challenges, just warm cobblestones beneath your feet, and the faint scent of something, maybe cinnamon, fennel, or the smoky sleeve of someone's cloak brushing past you. Everything around you is old, but not in that crumbling, forgotten way. The houses are low and red-bricked, their doors slightly ajar like mouths in the middle of a story. A woman sits rinsing herbs at her doorstep. She looks up and smiles, not even a flicker of suspicion in her gaze. "New in town?" she says. "Help yourself if you're hungry. There's soup next door." She gestures to the neighbouring house. Its door yawns open, beckoning. You step forward hesitantly, your feet unsure whether to trust the floor. Somewhere in the back of your mind, your modern reflexes scream, "It's a trap." But there are no cameras, no alarms, not even a latch. Inside, a soft glow from an oil lamp dances on the walls. The air is thick with the scent of root vegetables and warm bread. A young woman chops greens at a counter. A child scribbles with charcoal on the floor. A fat, indifferent cat sleeps by the hearth. No one glances at you like you don't belong. They look up, acknowledge your presence, and simply return to what they were doing. You are already part of this moment, whether you plan to be or not. The young woman offers a bowl of soup without a word. You sit, because refusing feels more awkward than accepting. The soup is basic: cabbage, onion, water, but it tastes like trust. You feel it settling somewhere beneath your ribs. There is no lock on the door. Not even a bar or peg, just weathered hinges and faith. You step back outside, walking slowly along the worn stones that lead into the heart of the city. Shops sit open, their goods left in the open air. Baskets of dried apricots, bolts of linen, strange spices labelled only by scent. People drift past, slipping a coin into a jar or simply smiling and moving on. No one shouts. No one watches. You stop by an old man weaving baskets near a small fountain. "Aren't people afraid of thieves here?" you ask. He chuckles, barely looking up. "Thieves? What's left to steal when everyone has what they need? The only treasure worth guarding is what you carry in your chest." Before you can process that, a group of children runs laughing down the street. One trips and skins her knee. A nearby stranger, someone clearly not her mother, kneels, wipes the blood with her sleeve, and hums a tune that quiets the tears like magic. You feel it creeping in, the uncomfortable, disarming weight of being trusted. No suspicion, no caveats, just open doors and open hearts. This place, it shouldn't exist. Historians still argue over whether such a city ever did. Some claim it was a failed utopian experiment off the Aegean coast. dating back to the 4th century BCE. Others insist it's purely myth, an oral fantasy passed down by travelling monks and idealists. No official ruins have ever been confirmed. But legends, they cling to the wind in certain places. Still, the stones beneath your feet are real. The bowl of soup in your stomach is warm. And the doors, oh, the doors are very much open. At the bend in the road, you reach a small square where a fig tree spreads its branches wide. A hand-painted sign swings gently from a nail driven into the bark. The door stays open when the heart does too. But if you're afraid, maybe ask what you're carrying. You stand there longer than you mean to. Maybe what keeps you from walking through these homes isn't fear of what you'll find, but what you've brought with you. You turn down a narrow alley lit by soft amber glow. Your shadow flickers against the stone like a cautious twin, still unsure whether to trust this dream. And just ahead, without fanfare, the marketplace awaits, unguarded, unhurried, and completely unlocked. The alley spills you gently into the city's open-air marketplace, and if you're expecting shouts, bartering, or someone thrusting a price tag in your face, you're in for disappointment, or relief, or both. Here, the market doesn't hum with urgency, it purrs. You pass a low wooden table bearing small jars of saffron, the kind that would normally be kept under glass in modern shops. Like it's some kind of royal jewel, but here the jars sit out in the sun, lids loose, scent drifting lazily through the square. Beside them is a little dish, carved from bone, with coins, just sitting there. No one watches them, no one counts. People stop, take a jar, drop a coin, and move on. You trail behind a young boy with sun-bleached hair. He pockets a chunk of dried honeycomb from a stall, then pauses, digs into a pouch tied at his waist, and places a small seashell in the payment dish. Not a coin, just a shell. And the stall owner, who is dozing in a chair a few feet away, doesn't stir, doesn't flinch, doesn't care. You wonder how long such a system could possibly last. One hungry day, one desperate traveller. But then again, maybe the trick isn't guarding what you have. Maybe it's making sure no one ever feels the need to take. A smell pulls you toward the centre of the square. It's thick, sweet, slightly smoky, something caramelized, something comforting. You follow your nose to a small stone oven built right into the corner of a building. An elderly man is pulling out rounds of golden bread, steam rising off them like a mirage in the early light. He wears no apron, no gloves. His hands are old, veined and sure. He doesn't glance up as someone takes a loaf and sets down 3 green plums in exchange. You ask him softly, as not to startle, "Don't you worry about people just taking things?" He grunts gently. "They do, sometimes, but not often, and never twice." There's something in the way he says it, not threat, not warning, just fact. Like gravity, you can almost hear the weight of generations behind his voice. Not fear, just understanding. Nearby, a woman is selling textiles, colourful bolts of cloth that shimmer in the morning sun. You run your fingers across a length of fabric dyed deep indigo. It's soft, uneven, hand-woven, priceless in the right context. But she barely glances up from her knitting as you admire her wares. Instead, she gestures lazily toward a jar filled with almond shells and dried citrus peels. You assume it's payment, though it looks more like a snack bowl. You ask her if she's ever had something stolen. She laughs, full-bodied and amused. Stolen, maybe lost, more likely, but things find their way back. People do too. That's the second time today someone said something like that, and you're beginning to think this place doesn't just lack locks, it lacks suspicion altogether. A small boy approaches the stand. His feet are dusty, his tunic too big. He picks up a bundle of cloth, cradles it to his chest, and looks at the woman. She smiles and asks, "For your mother?" He nods solemnly. "Take it then," she says. "Tell her I'll come by this evening with thread. No money, no exchange, just trust. Again." Historians still debate whether markets like this could have actually functioned. Some claim that there were periods, especially in small, isolated city-states, where communal trust trumped commerce. Others believe it's an idealized fantasy, propped up by romantic travel accounts and faulty memory. Yet there are those rare ancient manuscripts that describe market laws based entirely on mutual necessity and seasonal rhythm, whatever that means. As you meander past the olive sellers, you notice something curious. The city doesn't seem to have signs or prices or guards, but it does have rhythm, a kind of gentle choreography. People glide past one another in a kind of slow-motion ballet. No one rushes, no one lingers too long. There's an unspoken etiquette so ingrained it doesn't need to be taught. You pause beside a well at the edge of the square. Children laugh as they haul up a bucket, splashing water over each other's feet. An older boy waits, then fills a jug and leaves 2 tiny apricots on the well's stone ledge. Again, no one asked him to, no one told him to. It just is. A woman beside you leans on her walking stick, watching the scene. She smiles without looking at you and says, "We're not better than other cities. We just forgot how to be worse." You turn to her, but she's already drifting away, step by step, like a figure in a dream. And maybe this is a dream. Maybe the kind where things are just strange enough to make you question your waking life. Like why your own city has locks on public restrooms, or why every store has a security camera pointed at the chewing gum. You pass a fruit stall and stop, because for a moment you're tempted to test it, to grab something and walk away without paying, just to see what happens. Would someone stop you? Would someone even care? But instead you leave a coin in the dish and take a pear so ripe it's practically blushing. You take a bite. It tastes like freedom, slightly overripe, slightly sun-warmed, and completely unearned. And as you chew, you find yourself smiling, because you're already starting to forget what it felt like to clutch your backpack tight. Because here, in this gentle place, the only thing people seem afraid of losing is their kindness. Just then, from beyond the square, a smell of yeast and dark malt rises in the air. There's a bakery up ahead, one that doesn't close at night, one that waits quietly for whoever might need bread after hours. The bakery greets you long before you see it. Its scent, warm, dark, slightly tangy like sourdough in spring, curls around the corners of alleyways and hangs low over the cobblestones like a sleepy fog. You follow it instinctively, like a moth to a flickering candle, until you reach a small stone building nestled between 2 quiet homes. There's no sign, no name. Just a wooden door propped open with a wedge of driftwood and the soft glow of firelight spilling out across the threshold. Inside, the space is barely big enough for 4 people to stand side by side. A wide oven takes up most of the back wall, its curved mouth glowing orange. Racks of cooling bread line the walls. Round loaves, knotted twists, braided lengths. Some are studded with nuts or seeds, others are simply dusted in flour like a final kiss from the miller. And here's the strange thing. There's no one behind the counter, no baker, no clerk, just bread, waiting. A hand-painted sign hangs from a wooden beam above the shelf. Take what you need, leave what you can. Bread shared is hunger halved. You blink at it, half expecting some hidden camera to emerge from behind the baskets. But of course there's nothing, just the soft pop of firewood and the hush of a room built on a promise. You reach out, hesitant, and choose a small round loaf with rosemary baked into the crust. Its weight feels oddly reassuring in your hands, like you're holding something that's not just food, but memory. A small box sits beside the exit, filled with all sorts of things: smooth stones, worn coins, scraps of parchment, even a sprig of lavender tied with red thread. Offerings. Payments, maybe, but not in any currency you've known. You add a coin of your own, one from your own world, something foreign here, and tuck the bread into your satchel. Outside, the city is shifting into evening. Lanterns are being lit one by one, not by officials, but by people simply passing by. A boy hops from post to post with a taper in hand, lighting each lamp with the confidence of someone who knows exactly what he's doing. And more importantly, why? You settle onto a bench beneath a fig tree, tearing into the bread. It's still warm, still soft, still impossible. And as you chew, you notice an elderly woman sitting a few feet away, her eyes closed, her face tilted up toward the stars, just beginning to emerge. She speaks, not opening her eyes. We used to lock things here a long time ago, until someone realized the locks were doing more damage than the thieves. You glance at her. There were thieves! She opens one eye, chuckles. Of course, people are people, but when you start locking everything, you don't just keep out the bad, you keep out the good too. You teach everyone to expect the worst, and soon they do. It's oddly simple, frighteningly simple, like truth that's been baked too long and comes out hard as crust. Historians have puzzled over this bakery, if it ever truly existed. One 12th century chronicler described a hearth of endless bread in a coastal settlement with no formal name. Another, writing a century later, mentioned a place where fire never died and no man paid the same coin twice. Some argue it was metaphor. Others think it was real, a communal oven where people contributed flour or wood and took bread as needed. Whatever it was, you're sitting in it now, chewing crust and feeling something shift in the quiet behind your ribs. A cat appears from nowhere, rubs against your leg, then leaps lightly onto the bench beside you. It stares with regal disinterest as you offer it a crumb of bread, then turns its nose up with theatrical disdain. Clearly it has standards. You lean back and watch the lanterns flicker higher into the night. The sky here doesn't seem to rush. It unfolds itself slowly, carefully, as if aware someone is watching. A group of musicians gathers in a nearby corner. Flutes, a hand drum, a stringed instrument that looks like a cross between a lute and a turtle. They begin to play, not loudly, not even together at first. It's more like a musical conversation that drifts lazily across the stones. People don't crowd around, no one claps. It's not a performance, it's just part of the night, like the breeze or the rustling trees. You listen and for a moment it feels like the music is telling you something you forgot you knew. A melody written before suspicion was born. You take another bite of bread. You wonder how people here learn this kind of trust. Is it taught, absorbed, stumbled into? You remember something the woman said about how locks train you to expect the worst. Maybe here they just never got the training. In the distance the tower bells chime, not a sharp clang, but a mellow rolling sound like bronze yawning in its sleep. You gather your things, brush the crumbs from your lap, and follow the direction the music points you toward. Past the last glowing lantern, the street narrows again, and something catches your eye. A low building with intricate carvings on its doorway. A place that smells faintly of sage and candle wax. And inside you can already sense it. A quiet shrine. A space for something sacred. And not a single lock in sight. You step beneath the carved stone archway, careful not to disturb the hush that seems to hang like incense in the air. The door is wide open. Of course it is. and though no one stands at its threshold, the space feels watched, not in a threatening way, but like a breath held in reverence. Inside the shrine is dim. Candles flicker along shallow wall niches, their flames reflected in tiny copper mirrors. The air is cool and scented, sage, myrrh, something else you can't quite place, maybe cedar, maybe time itself. It smells like memory, if memory had a temperature. There are no pews, no pulpits, no grand declarations etched in gold. Just cushions on the floor and a wide stone basin in the centre of the room, filled with water, so still it looks like polished obsidian. Floating on its surface are small flower petals, lavender, jasmine, the soft ivory of crushed chamomile. Someone clearly placed them there with care. No guards, no rules posted. Just trust again, woven into the very foundation. You sit on one of the cushions and watch the petals swirl slowly, responding to something unseen, a draft maybe, or something older than wind. The shrine doesn't belong to any religion you recognize. No crosses, no crescents, no icons, just symbols carved into the walls. A spiral, an open hand, a pair of birds facing one another. Universal things, gentle things. This isn't a place for fear or judgment. It feels like a place built to remember how not to be afraid. A figure enters quietly from a back alcove. They wear simple linen robes, bare feet, silver hair tied back in a knot that doesn't care if it's symmetrical. They smile when they see you, not surprised, not curious, just pleased, like someone recognizing a guest who took their time arriving. You ask softly, "What is this place?" They sit across from you, cross-legged, hands resting on their knees. It's a place where people come when they've forgotten why they trust. You frown slightly. "So, a temple?" They shrug. More like a reminder. You can't force trust, but you can sit with it long enough to remember it. Outside, the city sounds dim to a murmur. Even the bells seem to hold their breath near this place. You ask about the symbols on the walls, and the figure smiles again. The spiral means time, not in a straight line. In a circle, what you send out comes back. They trace it in the air with one finger. The open hand means offering. You can't hold anything if your hand is always clenched. And the birds, they gesture toward the carved doves, mean listening. They sing only when the air is safe. You look back at the basin. The water hasn't rippled once. There's a silence between you, not awkward but companionable, like the kind that grows between old friends. You find yourself speaking without planning to. You talk about your own city, the keys in your pockets, the passwords in your head, the way you sometimes double-check the door even after locking it, just in case. The figure nods, listening, not offering correction, just holding space for your voice. Historians have long puzzled over this shrine, or shrines like it. A few stone foundations found in coastal ruins seem to match descriptions from scrolls uncovered in Cappadocia, or scattered through the footnotes of Phoenician traders' diaries. They speak of temples to open hearts, always unguarded, always open, always used, but never defiled. Some scholars believe these places were maintained not by faith, but by collective agreement, unspoken, unfailing, fragile as breath. Others think the stories are nonsense, utopian daydreams written in the haze of old age. But still, no one has ever found a shrine with locks. The figure beside you rises, bowing their head gently. "You don't have to believe now," they say, "only to remember." And with that they vanish into the shadows of the back room, leaving you with only the soft light, the still water, and your own reflection looking strangely more open. You stand slowly. The cushions shift under your weight, as if reluctant to let you go. As you step toward the doorway, you pause, turning back one last time. It's quiet, not empty, just waiting. And somehow you feel lighter as you leave, like something you carried in with you decided to stay. Back outside, the city exhales. The streets are bathed in the deep navy of early night. You hear laughter drifting from a nearby rooftop, and the far-off pluck of strings. You head toward the sound, the scent of fig and wood smoke drawing you forward, past a row of low homes with lanterns in the windows. And there, just up ahead, a question begins to form in your mind. If no one locks their doors here, how do they deal with thieves? But the better question is already waiting for you at the end of the block. Not how do they deal with them, but why they don't seem to have any at all. The question settles over you like the evening dew, quiet, persistent, a little inconvenient. How does a city function without punishment? Without locks, alarms, or even a disapproving glance? You follow the sounds of soft music down a street that seems to narrow with each step. The houses press closer here, as if leaning in to hear what you're thinking. Their shutters are open to the night, candles dancing on sills, conversations murmuring just beyond linen curtains. You turn a corner and find yourself in a small courtyard surrounded by orange trees, their branches heavy with fruit. A few people are gathered near the centre, where a low stone bench curls around a bubbling fountain. The musicians sit cross-legged at its base, half lost in melody. A child naps with their head in someone's lap. A cat paces the edge of the fountain like it's contemplating philosophy. You sit, unnoticed but welcome. As the notes fade into the evening air, someone beside you says softly, "You're wondering about crime." You turn and find a man in his middle years, face lined like folded parchment, eyes clear and kind. He doesn't wait for your answer. People always ask. It's the first thing anyone thinks when they hear about us. If no one locks anything, doesn't someone steal everything? He smiles gently, almost sadly. But the better question is, what if people don't feel the need to? You glance around the courtyard. No guards, no surveillance, just belonging. Surely someone must have tried, you say. Oh, of course, he replies. People get desperate or angry or forget who they are for a while. It happens. You wait for the rest, for talk of prisons, punishments, public shame, but he simply shrugs. We talk to them, feed them, listen, and usually they stop. You blink. That's it? Well, he says, leaning back against the fountain, we don't chase them off or lock them up. We assume their need is greater than their wrongdoing. And here's the thing about people. When they're not treated like criminals, they don't act like criminals for long. You want to argue, you want to present statistics, modern logic, case studies. But your brain, softened by bread and music and candlelight, just sighs and sits with it instead. Historians are still split on whether this philosophy ever governed a real place. One obscure Roman text describes a town beyond trade, where theft was unknown because it was unneeded. Others chalk it up to early Christian or Buddhist ideals taken to impractical extremes. But the most curious piece of evidence is a fragment of a clay tablet uncovered near the Ionian coast, etched with what may be the earliest known law inscribed in the affirmative. If you are full, leave food. If you are cold, take fire. If you are empty, speak. No punishments, no threats, just invitations. You remember the offering box at the bakery, the payment dish with seashells, the cloth seller who gave a bundle away without blinking. What if trust isn't a response to goodness? What if it's the reason goodness exists? The man beside you stretches, his joints crackling like old books being opened. You know, he says, almost to himself, It's funny. Strangers walk in afraid they'll be robbed, but we worry more about whether they'll feel lonely. He stands, nods at you kindly, and disappears down the nearest alley with the kind of unhurried ease only a person without fear can manage. You stay on the bench a while longer, watching the way people move. How they glance at one another, not out of suspicion, but to say, I see you. You're safe here. Eventually, you rise and walk again. The air is cooler now, edged with sea salt and rosemary. You pass a window where someone is playing a slow melody on a hand harp. The tune lingers behind you like the tale of a dream. You turn another corner and there, as if summoned by your thoughts, is something you didn't expect. A man standing in front of a home that isn't his. His clothes are dusty, his posture tense, and in his hands a piece of fruit taken from someone's open windowsill. He catches your gaze, and instead of running, he lowers the fruit slowly and begins to cry. Not sobbing, not dramatic, just tears like something inside him finally broke loose. Before you can move, a woman from the house steps into view. She sees the scene, the fruit, the man. She doesn't shout. She doesn't scold. She steps forward, takes the fruit from his hand, and hands it back to him. Then she says softly, "Come inside. You look like you haven't eaten in days." The man nods, ashamed, grateful, confused. He follows her in. The door, of course, stays open behind them, and you, standing alone under a street lamp carved with ivy, are left with the quiet hum of a city that somehow chose trust over fear, and hasn't looked back since. You walk on. Somewhere ahead there's a classroom, but they don't teach math or war there. They teach something else entirely. You find the school by accident, though something about the path suggests you were meant to. The street opens up to a wide, sun-washed plaza, and at its centre sits a building shaped more like a home than any institution you've known. No iron gates, no bell towers. Just an arched doorway framed with vines and a low wooden sign that reads, "To teach trust, begin by trusting." Night, it's quiet but not empty. The walls are painted with stories, murals of people handing bread to strangers, mending cloaks for travellers, opening doors to the lost. There are no desks in neat rows, just cushions and low tables, and the soft hum of conversation. A woman with a braid down her back looks up as you enter. "You're welcome," she says before you can introduce yourself. "You don't have to speak if you don't want to." Children of all ages are gathered in clusters. Some are reading from illustrated scrolls. Others are carving shapes into beeswax or arranging smooth stones into spirals. In one corner, a boy is attempting to balance a plum on his head, while the others cheer him on like it's a sacred rite. No one is shouting, no one is bored. You sit near a group of children listening to a young teacher tell a story. It's about a man who tried to steal bread during a famine, but was offered more instead. He returned the next day with his wife, a loaf of his own, and tears in his eyes. The lesson isn't delivered with finger-wagging or fear. It's told like a bedtime story, softly, slowly, with warmth. The teacher pauses and asks, "Why didn't they chase him away?" A little girl answers, "Because someone who's hurting doesn't need a wall. They need a window." Another child adds, "Because being afraid makes people forget who they are." The others nod as if this is common knowledge, like how to breathe or where the moon rises. You watch as they shift into another activity. One boy carefully writes something on a piece of bark with ink made from crushed berries. He sets it in the centre of the room. A girl walks by, reads it, and places a petal on top. It's a wordless game of acknowledgement, like saying, "I hear you," without making a sound. The teacher sees you watching. She walks over and kneels beside you. This is our most important lesson, she says. Before we teach numbers or stars or even language, we teach them how to live in a world where no one locks the door. You glance toward the exit, still open. How do you teach something like that? We show them, she says simply, every day, in how we speak, in how we wait, in how we forgive mistakes that haven't even happened yet. It sounds impossible, but then again, so does everything else in this city. Historians have often debated whether ancient societies taught morality in formal ways. Some argue that communal values were learned strictly through imitation, children watching adults and absorbing their behaviours. Others claim there were specific rituals, even schools, designed to instruct kindness as intentionally as we now teach algebra. A recently translated parchment from an Anatolian monastery includes references to trust circles, where children would take turns sharing items of value with each other, items they were afraid to lose. Over time, the exercise was said to dissolve fear like salt in warm water. Looking around this space, you see that same principle in motion. No adult hovering, no testing. Just small acts of vulnerability practiced like breathing. You watch as a girl accidentally tears a sheet of paper another child had painted. She gasps. He freezes. And then, without drama, without accusation, he says, "Let's fix it together." They do. The page is patched with cloth and pressed between two stones to dry. No one claps, no one intervenes, they simply move on. You rise and step outside, into air that smells faintly of citrus and wood smoke. The plaza is quiet now, shadows stretching long as the sun slips lower. You wonder how a world like this sustains itself. How a city raises children to trust before they even understand what betrayal is. And then you realize maybe the real miracle isn't that people here don't lock their doors. Maybe it's that they've never been taught to lock their hearts. As you walk on, the stones beneath your feet grow warmer with each step, as if the city itself remembers everyone who's walked this path before. You pass homes with open shutters and balconies strung with drying herbs. In one window, a child waves. You wave back, and in the stillness that follows, you feel something shift inside you, a loosening. Not of vigilance, but of the tension you've carried for years without noticing. Up ahead you hear laughter, the smell of fruit. A low wall painted with the stories of those who lived here long before you arrived. But first, a door. Open, of course. And a hallway filled with stories. You step through the doorway without hesitation now. The floor is made of smooth stone tiles worn down by barefoot passage. The walls are unlike any you've seen in the city so far. Painted, yes, but not with scenes of saints or kings or battles. Instead, they are covered with stories, not books, not scrolls, but murals, hundreds of them, stretching along the curved hallway like a continuous river of memory. Each panel is a life, it seems. Some painted in vibrant colour, others in quiet earth tones. One shows a young man handing his last coin to an old woman. Another depicts two girls planting a tree beside a crumbling wall. A third shows a boy alone at a table, until a crowd of hands reaches toward him from the frame beside it. You trace one of the painted lines with your finger. It's slightly raised, as if the paint was laid on thick with purpose, meant to last. The figures aren't famous. They're not royalty or warriors. They're just people. Moments. Truths that didn't make it into textbooks. A small brass plaque near the floor reads, "What isn't locked is remembered. What's remembered can't be stolen." You move slowly down the hallway, the weight of the place sinking into your steps. At one point you find a small alcove where a woman is seated on a low stool, paintbrush in hand. She's adding the final strokes to a new panel, a man repairing a cracked pot while a child watches nearby. She hums softly as she works, not acknowledging your presence right away. You don't interrupt. Finally, she speaks without turning. "This is Pasha," she says. "He used to leave food at the doorsteps of people he thought were too proud to ask." You glance again at the pot, the man, the child. She dips her brush in ochre, flicks a small detail into the man's beard, then continues. "He never told anyone. We only found out after he passed, when the notes he left started to match the handwriting on old letters." You ask, "How do you decide which stories go here?" She pauses, then finally turns to you. "We don't. They arrive. When someone remembers, they come tell us, or they leave a drawing, or a word, and we try to preserve it." Tam. There's no hierarchy here, no grand central portrait, just space for everyone who's been kind enough, quiet enough, brave enough to matter. Some of the murals are fading. Others are newer, with fresh pigment that hasn't yet settled into the stone. The passage of time is clear, but nothing has been covered or replaced. Every story is still here, like rings in a tree, layered and visible. Historians once uncovered an archive in a ruined city near the Mediterranean coast that contained no records of rulers or taxes, only personal journals, songs, and community letters. Some dismissed it as the debris of peasants. Others called it a radical experiment in collective memory. But one archaeologist described it more poetically. It was a city that forgot how to glorify power and remembered how to honor presence. This hallway feels like that. You stop before a small, delicate painting of an old woman sitting on a rooftop, holding a cup of tea to the sky. There's no crowd, no ceremony, just her and the horizon. A note beneath it reads, "She said goodbye to the sun every evening in case it didn't return." You smile. Not because it's funny, but because it's true. Or it was, at least for her. And now it's part of the city forever. As you reach the end of the hallway, a tall doorway opens into a circular room. Its ceiling is a dome, painted deep blue with pinpricks of silver for stars. Cushions circle the floor, and on the far wall is a blank stretch of plaster, waiting, you realize, for the next story. A young boy sits in the corner, sketching in charcoal. He's focused, tongue peeking from his lips as he tries to get a curve just right. You ask what he's drawing. He shrugs. "Something I saw." You peer closer. It's a figure walking through a field of open doors, hands full of fruit, eyes wide with wonder. It's you. Probably. Possibly. Or maybe just another traveller who wandered in and forgot how to doubt. You leave the hallway quietly, and as the door swings gently behind you, you notice it doesn't latch. Of course it doesn't. Outside, the light is softer now. The sun has dipped behind the hills, and lanterns glow like distant fireflies. You take a breath. You've learned about the open doors. You've seen the markets, the school, the trust. But now, something deeper awaits. A gathering, a celebration, something old, something sacred. And not a single lock in sight. You follow the flicker of lanterns down a sloping path, and the sound comes before the sight. Soft drums, the hum of voices, something like laughter, wrapped in music. The air is thick with the scent of roasting chestnuts and crushed mint. Whatever is ahead of you isn't just a gathering. It's something the city has been building toward all day. You round the bend, and there it is, a wide open square glowing like a hearth at the centre of the night. Long tables spill across the cobblestones, none of them matching. They've clearly been brought from every home, pushed together like a puzzle that doesn't mind if its edges don't line up. Jugs of wine and steaming platters are already scattered across the surfaces. There are no assigned seats, no microphones, no signs, just people arriving, pulling up stools, and joining whatever conversation is already flowing. A low banner hangs between two fig trees, hand-painted in loose, joyful strokes. The Festival of Unlocked Doors. You blink, not sure whether to laugh or gasp. Of course, a celebration dedicated entirely to the thing this city does best. Not guarding, but opening. Not fearing, but inviting. You find a place near the end of one table. A woman with grey curls and ink-stained fingertips hands you a small plate, without a word. It holds something fried, something green, and something sweet. You don't know what any of it is. You eat it all anyway. At your side, a man pours wine into your cup and says, "To open doors and the courage not to close them." You raise your glass. The drums pick up a little speed. Someone taps a spoon against a jug and starts singing, not a melody you know, but one you understand anyway. It's about gathering and letting go and remembering what kindness sounds like. A child runs by barefoot, trailed by a dog with a ribbon around its neck. Someone's grandmother is dancing in circles with someone else's uncle. You realize slowly that this isn't some solemn rite. It's a party. A deeply human, joyously noisy, lovingly chaotic festival. And no one's watching the valuables, because they are the valuables. You lean back and look around. The doors of every building lining the square have been thrown wide open. Curtains sway in the breeze. Lamps glow like lazy fireflies. People move in and out of houses freely, carrying trays, returning bowls, bringing more laughter wherever they go. A man near you notices your gaze and says, "During the festival, no door can be closed. It's tradition." You raise an eyebrow. What if someone doesn't want company? He shrugs. Then they leave a note outside, sleeping or grumpy, or please come in quietly and don't move the cat. He grins. People here don't need much more than that. You ask how long the festival's been going. He tilts his head. In one way or another, since before memory, there are records, fragments really, of similar traditions scattered across history. In a village in northern Anatolia, archaeologists once found door hinges adorned with polished stones, but no latches, suggesting a ceremonial function rather than security. In a ruined temple on an island off Crete, a fresco depicts people exchanging gifts at the threshold of houses, every door wide, every guest barefoot. Some scholars insist these were seasonal harvest rites. Others believe they were part of an older social contract, the open house covenant, sometimes invoked during times of famine or mourning. But here in this city, it's alive. It's happening now. You wander between tables, sipping warm spiced tea handed to you by a stranger in a velvet shawl. At one corner of the square, a small stage has formed, just a raised platform of crates. A boy steps up and tells a story. No microphone, no costume. Just his voice, trembling slightly but gaining strength as he describes a time he thought no one would help him, and how someone did. The crowd listens without interruption. When he finishes, they cheer, not loudly but wholly. No one asks if the story is true. Because it is. The details don't matter. What matters is that it was offered freely. Later, a girl reads a list of everyone who lent out their cloak this past winter. It's not meant to embarrass, it's meant to honour. A kind of reverse tally of kindness. You sit again, full and oddly weightless. The firelight bounces off metal cups. The scent of rosemary bread drifts through the air. Someone beside you hums a tune that feels like it was written in your bones long ago. And then, in the middle of all of it, a moment of silence. Just one breath's worth. You look around, no one has vanished, no one has fallen quiet. But somehow everyone feels still, grounded, present. And in that silence you hear it, a kind of trust that doesn't need to be said out loud. Not anymore. You close your eyes for just a moment. When you open them, someone has placed a small token on the table beside your cup. A carved wooden bird, wings spread, barely larger than your thumb. No note, just the gesture. You pocket it gently and smile, because ahead, somewhere in the darkened edge of the city, there's a legend you've heard whispers of since you arrived. A door. A very old one. The only one in the city that has ever been sealed shut. And tomorrow you'll find out why. Morning arrives like a sigh. Soft, unhurried, draped in fog that curls low over the rooftops. The city so alive with music and laughter just hours ago now rests in a kind of hush. Not silence, but something gentler, like the space between heartbeats. You walk through the empty square, last night's festival now a scattering of cups and half-burnt candles. A few cats patrol the aftermath with lazy curiosity. The doors are still open, blankets hang from windowsills to dry. The scent of roasted chestnut lingers, faint but warm. Everyone is asleep, or somewhere quiet. Everyone except you. Because today you're chasing a rumour. You first heard it at the edge of the festival, between stories and spoonfuls of honeyed fig. Someone leaned close and whispered it like a secret. There's one door in this city that doesn't open, always been closed. No key, no handle, no story really. Just a fact. They call it the door that chose silence. You asked why it's closed. They just smiled and said, "That's the part no one agrees on. Now you're walking toward it. Not because you expect it to open, but because here, in a city that's never hidden anything, one sealed door feels more important than 1,000 open ones." You leave the main streets behind. The houses thin out. The air smells less like bread and more like stone. Ivy climbs higher on the walls out here, as if trying to hold the architecture together with soft green hands. You pass a row of weathered homes, older than the others. Their bricks are darker, their corners sharper. One of them leans slightly to the left, like it's been listening to the wind for too long. And then, there it is. No sign, no announcement. Just a door. Set into a narrow arch of stone, it's plain, even modest, worn wood, pale with age. There's no knob, no keyhole, no hinges visible. It's framed with carved spirals so faint you almost miss them. Spirals just like the ones from the shrine, time looping inward. You step closer, the air changes, not colder, just stiller. Even the birds seem to keep a respectful distance. You touch the door lightly. It doesn't move. Doesn't hum with mystery or magic. It just is. No plaque. No inscription. But someone has left a single object at its base. A pair of old sandals neatly placed side by side. They're worn through at the soles, the leather cracked. Someone walked a long way in them. And then, it seems, chose to stop here. You sit beside the door. It doesn't feel like a place of answers, it feels like a place of decisions. After a while, a woman approaches. She's carrying a basket of herbs and a small clay jar. You ask, "What's behind it?" She sits beside you and shrugs. Depends who you ask. Some say it's a tomb, others say it leads to a garden, or a library, or just more stone. She runs a finger along the spiral carved into the stone frame. Some say it's where trust goes when it breaks. But I think that's too dramatic. You glance at her. So what do you think? She smiles. I think it's not about what's behind it. I think it's about what we're not ready to open yet. You sit in silence for a long time. You think of the festival, of the bakery, of the boy who cried after taking a piece of fruit. You think of all the open doors you've walked through in this city, each one a soft rebellion against everything you've ever known. And then you think about this one, closed, quiet, unexplained. Somehow it makes the others more meaningful, because not everything has to be open to be understood. Some things just need to be honoured. Historians, of course, have written volumes about the door with no purpose. That's what they call it in surviving texts. A few even theorise it was symbolic, a ritual boundary marking the end of some ceremonial procession. Others believe it was a mistake, a doorway built and sealed before the house around it was ever finished. But the people who live here never bother with such theories. They just call it the quiet one. You rise slowly, brushing the dust from your clothes. The door remains. Still, unapologetic. And just as it should be. As you turn to leave, you notice a faint inscription scratched into the wall beside the arch. Almost invisible, written in an old script, but you can still make it out. Not every door must be passed through. Some are meant to be kept company. You smile and walk away, lighter than before, back toward the heart of the city, where something else is waiting, a man who stayed but never belonged, a traveller who arrived and forgot how to leave. You find him just after noon, seated beside a dry fountain with a broken sundial in its centre. His posture is easy, like someone who's been waiting a long time and has made peace with it. He wears a tunic the colour of dust and the expression of someone who has tried to leave and failed, more than once. You sit on the edge of the fountain, not too close. He doesn't look at you, but somehow you know he knows you're there. After a while he says, "You're not from here." It's not a question. You nod. "Neither are you." He smiles without turning. "No, I arrived long ago, I think. Time moves differently when every door opens." You wait. There's something in his tone, dry but not bitter, weary but not hopeless. He sounds like someone who's walked every alley, sat at every table, memorised every lantern-lit face. You ask, "Why didn't you leave?" He sighs. "Because leaving requires remembering what I came from. And I'm not sure I want to carry that weight back with me." He finally turns to look at you. His eyes are sharp but soft, like he's forgotten how to be suspicious, but still remembers the outline of it. "I came here on accident," he says. "A wrong turn. A ship that docked in fog. I meant to stay a night, maybe 2. He chuckles. "Then someone lent me a coat. Someone else baked me bread. And then a little girl handed me a flower with no reason at all. After that, I just stopped looking for the road back." You ask if he's ever tried to leave. He nods slowly. "Once, I got as far as the outer wall, the one by the old olive trees. I stood there for an hour, backpack on, shoes tied, heart pounding. Then I realised I hadn't locked the door of the place I'd been staying." You wait for the punchline. He says, "So I went back, just to lock it, just to leave properly." You tilt your head. "But no one locks doors here." He nods. "Exactly." That's when I knew I'd already changed. I didn't go back to get something. I went back to unlearn a habit. You let that settle in the air. He pulls something from his coat pocket and holds it out to you. A small, smooth stone with a hole worn through the middle. "These wash up on the beach sometimes," he says. "Locals call them eye stones. They say if you look through the hole at sunset, you'll see the last thing that made you afraid. You raise an eyebrow. And what if you're not afraid anymore? He smiles. Then you'll see the first thing you forgot to trust. You pocket the stone, unsure if you'll ever use it. Somewhere in the distance, a bell chimes. He leans back, eyes on the cracked sundial. People think staying is a choice you make once, but here it's a choice you make every morning. You wake up and say, yes, I'll trust again today, even if yesterday it didn't come back the way I expected, even if tomorrow it might sting. He glances at you. It's the hardest habit you'll ever learn, but the most worth keeping. Historians have written of the quiet residents, people who came to the city of open doors and never left. Some called them exiles, others pilgrims. A few ancient maps mark the city with a symbol, a spiral inward rather than outward, suggesting not a capital or a port, but a place where things return to themselves. A 16th century traveller once described meeting a woman there who couldn't remember what language she used to speak. She simply said, "The one I use now is enough." The man beside you closes his eyes, face turned up toward the sun. Most cities teach you to protect what's yours, he murmurs. This one teaches you to offer it, even if it's just your attention, or your time, or the last peach in your bowl. You realize now you haven't asked his name, you're not sure it matters, because people here don't name themselves the way others do. They're remembered by the warmth of their bread, or the stories they tell, or the way they leave the door open a little longer than needed. Still, before you stand, you ask him gently, "Will you ever go back?" He opens one eye, thinks for a while, then, "Maybe, but not to stay, just to visit. Maybe I'll walk through a city full of locks and smile because I know a place that forgot how to need them." You leave him at the fountain where a bird has just landed to drink from a puddle in the sundial's shadow. As you walk, you realize the city has begun to settle into the golden hush of evening again. But this time you're not just passing through. You're listening, watching, maybe even remembering. Up ahead, a house comes into view, one you don't recognize. Its door is open. A lantern glows in the window, and inside someone's humming a tune you almost know. You hesitate only briefly. Then you step inside. Because here, that's what you do. The house is quiet, but not empty. The kind of quiet that feels held, like warm hands cupped around a flame. It's small, just 2 rooms, really. One for sleeping, one for living. The floor is stone, smoothed down by bare feet. The windows are open to the night air, letting in the scent of rosemary and old wood. On one wall hangs a faded tapestry, the threads worn but lovingly mended. It shows a tree with golden leaves and roots that wind down into something that might be a heart, or a door. There's a bowl of fruit on the table, a cup of water, a folded blanket, all waiting, and not a soul in sight. It's not your house, but somehow it feels like it was expecting you. You sit in the wide wooden chair by the window, its armrests worn smooth by the weight of past visitors. A book lies face down on a side table, the spine gently cracked. You pick it up, glance at the title, The People Who Stayed. You smile, then flip it open at random. The page reads, "We didn't plan to build a city without locks, we just stopped needing them. And then we forgot they were ever there." There's no author listed. No publisher, just words, and the impression of many hands having turned these pages before you. You set it down and gaze out the window. Across the narrow street, another home is lit. You can see someone stirring a pot, their silhouette swaying slightly to some internal rhythm. A few doors down, a group is seated in the entryway of another home, talking softly in the slow language of those who know they'll be heard. You lean back, and the chair creaks gently. Somewhere in the distance the bell tower hums, not ringing, just breathing, like the city itself. And then you hear it. A knock. 3 soft taps like someone asking permission to come into a house that doesn't lock. You rise, heart somehow steady, and walk to the door. A boy stands there, no more than 10, holding a bowl of lentils and a small loaf wrapped in cloth. "I think this was meant for you," he says. You take it, nod, and thank him. He nods back, serious as a courier delivering royal decree, and trots off into the dusk. You set the food on the table. You've noticed it by now, how meals just appear. Not always when you ask, but always when you need. Historians have long debated whether such a system could work. A kind of communal provisioning without registry, ration, or trade. Some describe similar practices in lost mountaintop villages in the Caucasus, where travellers would find fresh bread wrapped in wool outside the caves. Others dismiss the idea outright. They say cities need structure, rules, accountability. But maybe this city's structure is trust, and its rules are kindness, and its accountability is memory. You break the bread and eat slowly, feeling each bite like an echo. There's rosemary in the crust and something else, citrus maybe. It tastes like a story too old to name. Outside, a breeze carries voices from somewhere up the hill. Someone is singing. Not loudly, not for performance, just singing because they can. You close your eyes and lean your head against the cool stone wall. You feel full, but not with food, with presence, with the kind of belonging that doesn't ask questions, doesn't demand credentials, doesn't require you to prove yourself before handing you a bowl and a blanket. You open your eyes again and notice something you missed before. A line etched into the wooden beam above the window. So faint it disappears in the dark, but there if you look closely. This house was built for whoever needs it next. You stare at it for a long time. Then you rise, pick up the folded blanket, and step outside. You don't lock the door behind you. Of course you don't, because the next person might already be on their way. The street outside is bathed in that in-between light, the moment when day finally loosens its grip, but night hasn't yet taken hold. Lanterns blink to life one by one, as if the city is breathing them awake. You walk slowly, barefoot now. The stones beneath your feet are still warm from the sun, and the evening air brushes your skin with the scent of crushed thyme and something faintly sweet, figs maybe, or honey dripped from a windowsill. Up ahead, laughter ripples out from an alleyway. You turn and find a gathering, not a festival, not a planned event, just a group of neighbours sharing wine and stories under a canopy of drying laundry and twinkling lights. A woman with a braid piled high on her head gestures for you to join. You do without hesitation. They're telling stories, you realise, but not about things. From them. One man speaks about a time he lost his way in the hills outside the city. Instead of panic, he remembered something his grandmother told him. If you ever feel lost, ask a tree for directions. So he sat down beneath a pine tree, and sure enough, a passing goat led him home. The others nod like this is entirely reasonable. Another story follows, about a child who drew a map of the city entirely from memory. When the elders checked it, the streets were wrong, the proportions strange, but every open door was marked perfectly. She'd mapped not where things were, but where they had welcomed her. You sit in silence for a while, listening, and then, as naturally as anything, someone turns to you. Your turn, they say gently. You blink. You haven't told a story here yet, not aloud. But the others are waiting, not demanding, just ready. So you speak. You tell them about your city, the one you came from, where doors are locked and windows are double-glazed, where people walk fast and speak cautiously, where smiles are rare and trust is expensive. You don't say it with bitterness, you say it like fact. And then you tell them about your first morning here. The soup, the bakery, the cat who turned its nose up at your bread. They listen like it's a myth they've never heard before. When you finish, they smile, not because your story was special, but because it was yours. Someone refills your cup. The woman beside you presses a fig into your hand, warm and soft from a basket sitting beneath her chair. Thank you, she says, as if you gave her something. A hush settles over the group, and someone begins to hum. The melody is familiar now, the same one you've heard drifting from windows and doorways across the city. You join in without thinking. So do the others. It's not rehearsed, not perfect. But it wraps around you like a quilt stitched from memory. Afterward, as people start to drift away into the night, the woman with the basket says quietly, "We tell stories not to impress, just to leave a trail, so the next person knows where to walk." She presses something else into your hand before she goes, a small slip of cloth with a spiral embroidered in brown thread. It's warm, as if she's been holding it for a while. "You'll need this where you're going," she says without explanation, and just like that, she's gone. You walk home, if it can be called that now. The house you borrowed, the open doorway. But something in you feels different. You're starting to understand that home isn't a place that closes behind you. It's one that stays open even after you leave. As you step inside, the lantern is still lit. The blanket folded neatly. The fruit bowl now holds a single pomegranate. And a note beside it, written in looping, unfamiliar handwriting, for tomorrow's wondering. You don't question it. You don't even feel the need to know who left it. You simply sit and breathe and let the city hold you, because it always does. The next morning greets you without knocking. Light slips in through the open window like an old friend, slow and easy. Somewhere nearby, a broom swishes against stone, rhythmic and reassuring. No alarms, no rush, just the city waking up one breath at a time. You rise, still barefoot, and stretch toward the ceiling's wooden beams. There's a soft ache in your arms, the kind that comes not from strain, but from carrying something unfamiliar, maybe trust, maybe memory. The pomegranate on the table catches your eye. You pick it up. It's heavier than it looks. Its skin is smooth, tight with ripeness. You turn it over in your hands, then peel it slowly, watching the red seeds glisten in the morning light like tiny jewels. You eat a few. They burst on your tongue with a sweetness so sharp it almost hurts. And for some reason that's when you decide to visit the wall. Not the symbolic one, the literal one, the ancient crumbling edge of the city. The one people mention in passing but never describe. The one no one seems to guard because it doesn't need to be. You step outside and follow a path that coils through vegetable gardens and stone terraces. The city begins to thin. Houses give way to wildflowers. Chickens wander across the road without urgency or purpose. The air smells of thyme and dry grass. Eventually the wall appears, low, worn, more like a suggestion than a barrier. It doesn't tower or threaten. It simply marks a threshold. Beyond it, hills, sky, and the long stretch of silence that belongs to the world outside. You approach slowly. A bench sits just before the wall, shaded by an old olive tree. A woman is already seated there, wrapped in a shawl the colour of smoke. She's sewing something small into a piece of cloth, maybe a name, maybe a symbol. Her fingers move without pause, but her eyes lift as you near. "You came," she says. You pause. "Were you expecting me?" She smiles. "No, but someone always does." You sit beside her and the view opens wide. Rolling hills brushed with golden grass, a ribbon of river in the distance. And further still, the faintest outline of what might be another city. Locked, loud, far. She gestures to the wall. That's the edge. You ask, of what? She shrugs. Of forgetting. Beyond it, people forget how to wait, how to share, how to listen without planning what to say next. You both sit in silence. A breeze lifts a strand of her hair and sets the tree above you to murmuring. I've crossed it, she says eventually. Years ago. You look at her. Why did you come back? She considers that for a while, then answers, because I missed being seen without being measured. You nod. It's a strange kind of ache, remembering the times you were only noticed for what you could provide, prove, or pretend, and realizing how rare it is to simply be. There's no border guard, you murmur, eyeing the open space beyond the wall. No need, she replies. The world beyond doesn't want what we keep here, and we don't need what it insists we should. She offers you a piece of thread. If you cross, take this, just in case you need to find your way back. You pocket it without asking what for. Historians have puzzled over this so-called wall. Some claim it was a defensive structure long abandoned. Others say it marked the edge of a sanctuary, where no weapons or wealth could pass. A few believe it was never a wall at all, but a gathering place, a ceremonial edge where people came not to defend, but to decide. One ancient poet described it as the place where belonging ends and choosing begins. You rise after a while, thanking the woman. She nods, already returning to her stitching. You walk to the wall and place your hand on it. It's warm, and it doesn't resist you. You could cross. Right now, nothing would stop you, but you don't. Not yet. Because there is one more place in the city calling to you. A square you passed earlier. A house painted in shades of blue, with a carved door that always seems to be half open, no matter the hour. Someone lives there. Someone who, they say, hasn't left in decades. Not because they can't, but because they're still listening. The house isn't hard to find. It sits at the corner of a quiet square where the shadows stretch long in the late afternoon. The walls are a faded, patchy blue, like old skycloth washed too many times. There's a vine climbing the facade, its leaves soft and curling, almost shy. The door is, as you'd heard, half open, just enough to see the light inside, not enough to intrude. You pause at the threshold. Not because you doubt you're welcome, but because something about this place asks for stillness. It feels like a house that listens back. You knock gently, more for you than for them. A voice answers from within, low and steady. Come in if your heart is quiet. You step inside. The room is dim but not dark. Shelves line the walls, filled with jars of dried herbs, stones, feathers, and small objects whose meanings are clearly not meant to be explained. There's a fireplace unlit with a thick cushion placed directly in front of it. A kettle sits on a low table, steam curling from its spout. In the corner, a man sits on a wide chair carved from a single piece of wood. His beard is long, silver streaked with something darker. His eyes are bright and sharp, not with suspicion, but with the kind of attention that makes you forget what you were nervous about. You're the one who's been walking slow, he says. You hesitate and then nod. He gestures to a cushion. Good. People who rush miss the thread. You sit. He pours tea into 2 cups. No questions asked. It smells of lemon peel and something earthy. You sip. It's warm and steadying. I was told, you begin, that you've been here a long time. I was born here, he replies. Left for a while. came back when the noise became too loud. He leans back, staring at the ceiling beams. This city doesn't teach you with lessons. It teaches you with pauses, with the space between things. You glance around the room. The shelves are dusty but clearly tended. Some of the jars have notes tied to them with fraying twine, names perhaps, or reminders. "What do you do here?" you ask. He smiles. "I listen." "To what?" He lifts a hand, then lets it fall. Whatever speaks, footsteps, wind, stories people don't finish, the way someone lingers at a doorway but doesn't knock. You sit with that for a moment. "Isn't that lonely?" He chuckles. "Only if I stop paying attention." There's a long silence, but it doesn't feel empty. It feels kind. Like the kind of silence that lets two people share a moment without shaping it into anything else. He nods toward a scroll resting on the table between you. "That was left here a few days ago. Unmarked. I haven't opened it yet." You lift it carefully. The paper is soft, its edges curled. You untie the ribbon. Inside is a single sentence written in dark ink and careful script. "I left my door open, but no one came. That was the first time I realized I didn't need to be needed to be part of this place." You both read it again. Then he says, "Some people think being seen means being used, but not here." He gestures toward the window, where the last rays of sunlight spill across the wooden floor. "Here, you are allowed to exist, quietly, without proving anything." Historians would scoff, perhaps, at the idea of someone holding the role of listener as an official title. But in some ancient city-states, there were records of a figure called the Rememberer, not a scribe, not a judge, but someone whose only role was to hold stories, especially the ones no one else could carry. They were often unnamed, uncelebrated, but nothing important happened in their absence. You look at the man again. He doesn't seem to expect anything from you, which is precisely why you feel compelled to speak. You tell him about the door that didn't open, about the woman stitching at the edge of the city, about the boy who brought you lentils, about the pomegranate. He listens. And when you finish, he nods once, then says, "You're ready to begin forgetting." You blink. Forgetting? He smiles gently. Not your past, not yourself, just the parts of you that only existed to defend what didn't need protecting. You sit with that for a long time. Then you drink your tea. When you rise to leave, he doesn't follow, doesn't speak. But just before you step outside, he calls after you. "You've already left a door open behind you. Make sure to leave one ahead of you too." You step into the street, the air now full of twilight. And you realize, for the first time in a long time, you're not afraid of being seen. The street outside welcomes you like a familiar path in a dream, dimly lit, but sure beneath your feet. Lamps glow from windowsills like sleepy eyes still watching, not out of suspicion, but of habit born from care. You walk slowly, letting the cool air fill your lungs. Somewhere, a pot clinks gently as it's set on a stove. Somewhere else, a soft voice hums the same melody you've been hearing since your first night here. It's beginning to feel like the city has a single breath, and you've been breathing in time with it all along. As you round a bend, you see the library. Not grand, not towering, not even labelled. Just a building wider than most, with shelves visible even from the outside through open windows. No guards, no checkout counters. No signs that say silence or do not touch, or restricted section. You push the door open. No creak, no resistance, just invitation. Inside, the space stretches deeper than it should. Books line every surface, piled, stacked, balanced precariously in corners. Not just bound volumes either. Scrolls, letters, folded bits of parchment tied with ribbon. Small painted tiles etched with symbols. All of them gently worn, clearly loved. There's a woman standing on a stool, adjusting a jar on a high shelf. The jar is filled not with ink or pens, but buttons, every shape and colour. When she sees you, she grins. "Looking for something?" she asks. You hesitate. "I'm not sure." She hops down. "Perfect, that's the best place to begin." She leads you to a small table where a dozen books sit stacked. Each has a note tied to its cover. Lost and found. Things you thought you forgot. Words for the end of a day. She gestures. "These were left out this morning. You can borrow, keep, or read them here, or add your own." You pick up the one labelled Things You Thought You Forgot. Inside, fragments, tiny stories, one sentence each. "My grandfather never locked the pantry, even during famines. The neighbour who always waved, even after I stopped waving back. The door my mother kept open in case my father ever returned." Page after page of loss and grace and memory, each small, soft, and luminous like fireflies, caught in a jar and released again. You close the book gently. "Who writes these?" you ask. She shrugs. "Everyone, eventually." Historians have rarely encountered libraries like this in the archaeological record. Most collections focused on power, land ownership, tribute, politics. But here you begin to suspect the real currency is memory, emotional currency, the kind that doesn't accrue interest or decay in vaults, the kind that lives only when shared. You glance around and notice something else. Not all the books are in one language. Some use pictographs. Others are written in lines so thin they seem to vanish if you stare too long. And some are blank. "Those are for what hasn't happened yet," the woman says, noticing your gaze. You ask, "Can anyone write in them?" She smiles. "Only those who've remembered enough to forget what doesn't matter." You don't press for clarity. You're beginning to understand that in this city, some answers aren't meant to be unwrapped. They're meant to be carried, like stones in a pocket or thread on a wrist. You take a blank book from the shelf. Inside the cover is a single sentence, pre-written, "Begin where the door was. You take it with you." Outside, the city has tilted fully into night. Shadows lie long across the stones, but nothing is hidden. A candle flickers in a second-story window, and below it someone has left out a pot of stew with a sign. "For anyone returning late." You don't eat, but the gesture feeds something in you anyway. As you walk back toward the square, your footsteps fall into rhythm with someone else's. A boy, barely more than 10, walks beside you, whistling quietly, hands behind his back. You don't speak. And then, without looking at you, he says, "They say the city used to have locks." You glance at him. "Really?" He nods. "A long time ago. People forgot they had the keys. Eventually they forgot the locks too." You smile, he smiles back. Then he turns down an alley and vanishes. No door closes behind him. Because there was no door at all. You find your way back to the square without meaning to. Your feet choose the path, not your thoughts. It's quieter now than you've ever seen it. Not empty, just calm. The kind of calm that follows a good story told well, when no one speaks because there's nothing left to add. A single lantern sways above the fountain in the centre. Its light casts soft ripples across the stone, dancing in the water's reflection. The bench nearby is empty. So you sit. Not because you're tired, but because something about this place always gives you permission to pause. The blank book you took from the library rests in your hands, still closed. You open it slowly. There's the line again. Begin where the door was. And you know exactly where that is now. Not the bakery, not the shrine, not the sealed wooden door set into stone. The door was that first one, ajar, unguarded, wide open with the smell of soup behind it. That's where the city first let you in. That's where you first let it in. You press your hand against the paper and begin to write. Not with grand declarations, not with the pressure to be profound. Just small truths like planting seeds in soft earth. I was afraid to trust because I thought I had to earn it. Then someone handed me soup without asking who I was. You pause. The fountain burbles gently beside you. A breeze stirs the pages. I used to think safety came from walls, but this place showed me that it can come from chairs left on porches and bread left on windowsills. Another breath. You write slowly, one line at a time. I didn't come here to stay. I came here to remember something I'd forgotten. How to live without flinching. Somewhere nearby, a door opens. Not loudly. Just a quiet creak and the click of wood meeting wall. Someone is airing out their house before sleep. The scent of chamomile drifts into the air. And you realize this city isn't made of stone and doors and alleyways. It's made of gestures, of choices, of things given without keeping score. It's made of trust so consistent it becomes the weather. You think of the boy walking beside you, the woman stitching beside the wall, the man who never left the fountain, the pomegranate, the fig, the little wooden bird left beside your tea. None of them needed a reason. They just gave. And you, without even meaning to, have started to do the same. Historians searching for the structure of this city often missed what held it together. Not laws, not walls, not trade. But this. A string of moments where someone could have said no and said yes instead. You tuck the book into your satchel. You don't need to fill it in one sitting. There's time. That's something this place has in abundance. You rise and walk slowly back toward the house you've been calling home. The one with the window that always glows just enough to say, you're not forgotten. You step inside. The blanket has been folded again. The candle is lit. And on the table another note waits, this one shorter than the last. You're almost ready? You smile, not because you know what for, but because now, for the first time, not knowing doesn't feel like something to fear. You lie down, not as a guest, but as someone who belongs. And as your eyes begin to close, you think, tomorrow you'll visit the place no one talks about. The place where the first door was ever opened, not physically, but in a heart. And maybe it was yours. Morning arrives soft as a sigh, slipping between the shutters like a secret returning home. You wake slowly, not startled, not rushed. The blanket has wrapped itself around you just enough to remind you you're held. The note from the night before lies beside your head where it must have drifted. You're almost ready. You rise, stretch, and take your time preparing tea, because in this city, time is something you steep, not spent. The water hums as it heats, the cup warms your hands, and then you step out the door, letting it stay open behind you, because you wouldn't dream of doing otherwise. You ask no one for directions, still you know where to go. Past the fountain, past the quiet bakery, past the school where children are learning how to notice each other. You pass the woman with the fig basket, now tending a vine with hummingbirds flickering between the leaves. She nods at you without words, like she knows where you're headed and approves. The streets narrow not because the city is trying to close in, but because it wants you to focus. The buildings become simpler, fewer colours, fewer flourishes. Just quiet stone, smooth doorways, windows with no curtains. And then you arrive. There's no gate, no sign, just an open clearing with a single chair at its centre, made of pale wood, polished by decades of weather and sitting. And behind the chair, nothing. No walls, no roof, just the sky. And the first door. It's not attached to a house, not part of a building, just standing there freestanding and free-thinking. An old wooden frame, painted once but faded now to a soft, tender grey. It's been mended, carefully, repeatedly. Its hinges have rusted into place, but it still swings slightly in the wind, like it's nodding hello. You step closer. It's shorter than you expected, narrower, the kind of door a child might draw when asked to sketch home. You reach out and place your hand on it, and nothing happens, because nothing needs to happen. That's the whole point. You sit in the chair, and you wait. Not for a person, not for a sign. Just to listen. And in that stillness, you begin to remember. Not things you forgot, but things you buried. The way you used to flinch when someone knocked unexpectedly. The way you clutched your bag in a crowded space. The way you hesitated before telling someone your real thoughts, always editing for safety. And slowly, those things begin to loosen. Like a knot you didn't realize was in your chest. The door creaks softly beside you. It doesn't open. It doesn't close. It simply exists. And somehow that's enough. You close your eyes and let memory do what it does best when unbothered. Sort, sift, release. Historians would likely scoff at this place. A door to nowhere, a chair with no context. But in one nearly forgotten scroll, translated only partially before it crumbled, there is a line that now returns to you. At the centre of the city stood the first invitation, not to enter, but to be. You breathe that in. Let it settle behind your ribs. You think of the sealed door you saw earlier in your journey, and now suddenly it makes sense. That door closed because this one opened, because someone long ago chose to trust the world with their back turned, sitting in a chair, beside a door that asked nothing, and in doing so taught a city how to be kind. A breeze stirs your hair. Somewhere in the distance a bell hums once, not a signal, just a hello. You stand slowly. There's nothing left to say to this door, but you nod to it and walk away. Not because you've learned everything, but because you've learned enough to keep learning. You make your way back through the city, and now everything looks different, but nothing has changed. The bakery is still open, the fountain still laughs to itself, children still draw spirals in the dust. But now you see it all as part of the same story, your story. And when you reach your home, the one with the window and the note and the perfectly folded blanket, you know what you need to do next. Not stay, not go, but begin. You wake before the sun, not out of restlessness, but from a sense that something is waiting for you. The city is still half asleep. Lanterns flicker like drowsy fireflies, and the air is cool enough to make your breath visible. You step outside, the door swinging gently in the breeze behind you, and begin walking without a map. This morning, you're not looking for a place. You're listening for a voice. You hear it first as a whisper, an old man clearing his throat maybe, or a story brushing up against the edge of memory. You follow it through winding alleys, past a row of empty tables where the remains of last night's supper, olive pits, cracked walnut shells, still linger as proof of quiet company. And then you see him. The storyteller, Or perhaps he's just a man who's lived here longer than anyone else. He sits on a low stool in front of a house that leans slightly to one side, as if it's listening too. His hair is white, but his posture is still strong. His voice when he speaks is like gravel softened by rain. "You're the one who's been wandering," he says without looking up. "I've heard your footsteps on these stones." You nod, even though you know he isn't asking for confirmation. "Sit," he says, pointing to an overturned basket beside him. "If you want to know why this city trusts itself to sleep." You sit. He doesn't speak immediately. Instead, he takes his time, cutting a piece of fruit and handing you half. It's pear, ripe and soft. You bite into it, and the juice drips down your wrist. Somehow this feels like part of the story. Finally, he begins. "In the beginning, this place wasn't any different from the cities you know. There were locks, chains, even guards on every corner. People lived behind walls, afraid of each other. Every morning began with counting what they might lose." He pauses, eyes fixed on some point beyond you. Then one winter, the locks failed. Too much rust, too much cold. A single storm, and all the doors blew open. You lean forward, and nothing happened, he says. No one stole, no one harmed. People simply came inside. They shared fires, shared bread, shared space because they had no choice. He smiles faintly. After that, they wondered why they'd spent so long keeping each other out. You sit with that. It's simple, too simple. And yet it rings true in a way that statistics and history books never quite manage. The old man continues, his voice dropping to a hush. Some historians, if they could see us now, would call this naive. They would argue that trust must be earned, guarded, fenced. But the truth is, trust only lives when it's given. Hoarded trust dies like water in a sealed jar. You glance at the houses around you, their open doors, their curtains breathing in the early breeze. What if someone takes advantage of that? You ask. He chuckles. Someone always tries. But when a thief walks into an open door and finds not fear but kindness, they change faster than any punishment could manage. Not always, but often enough. He leans closer, his eyes suddenly sharp. The real risk isn't losing things. It's losing the ability to believe in each other. The weight of that lingers, heavier than it should. You want to argue, but part of you knows he's right. Why tell me this? You ask. Because, he says, you'll have to decide soon. Whether you'll leave, or whether you'll stay long enough to forget the language of locks. Historians have written of memory keepers in certain ancient cultures, elders tasked with carrying stories so fragile they could vanish if written down. The man before you feels like one of them, though his eyes suggest he carries not just stories, but entire seasons of human hope. Come back tonight, he says, standing slowly. There's something you should see. What is it? You ask. He smiles, faint but knowing. The first night of trust. You nod, though you don't fully understand. As he disappears into his house, leaving the door ajar, you realize you're smiling too. You walk back through the streets. The city is waking now, but differently. No rush, just an unfolding. Someone sets out bowls of fresh figs. Someone else leaves a loaf of bread on a step. Children chase each other barefoot, stopping only to wave at you like you've lived here forever. You pause looking around, and for a moment you can't remember the last time you thought about closing a door. The sun dips low behind the rooftops as you return to the old storyteller's house. The sky has turned the colour of faded apricots, and the air carries a hush that feels rehearsed, as if the city is holding its breath, waiting for something it remembers but rarely names. You find the stool empty this time, but the door is open. You step inside. The room is dimly lit, walls covered with maps, not of geography but of memory. Tiny symbols dot each surface, a cup, a loaf, a single open hand. No legend explains them. You don't need one. You've lived them now. The storyteller sits on the floor, cross-legged, before a wide bowl filled with water. Around it, a circle of others has gathered, some you've met before, others strangers until this moment. The woman with the fig basket, the boy who delivered lentils, the man from the fountain, even the librarian holding an unmarked scroll. No one speaks. The storyteller gestures for you to sit. You do. This is what we call the first night of trust, he says, voice low and steady. It happens not once a year, but once a person is ready. Some wait months, some wait a single day. Some don't even know it's happening until it's already begun. You glance around, no decorations, no feast, just presence. This night isn't about ceremony, he continues. It's about remembering the moment you chose to stop holding the door only for yourself. He nods toward the bowl, toward these. Each of you brought something. Place it in the water. One by one, the others step forward. The woman places a single fig. The boy, a piece of string tied into a loop. The man from the fountain, a smooth stone. The librarian, a folded corner torn from an unread scroll. Then it's your turn. You reach into your satchel and feel the weight of the small wooden bird left beside your cup all those nights ago. You hesitate, but then place it gently in the bowl. It floats. The storyteller nods. You've all come from different fears, he says. Loss, loneliness, doubt. But tonight those things stay outside. This space is only for what remains when the locks come off. He places both hands on the sides of the bowl. This city wasn't founded. It wasn't declared. It didn't even begin on purpose. It happened because a few tired souls stopped asking what was theirs and started asking who they could feed, who they could shelter, who they could trust for one more hour. He looks at you. He looks, and something in your chest stirs. Not pain, not fear, but a loosening. Historians have found traces of similar rituals, communal acts of symbolic surrender, across isolated mountain communities and forgotten island settlements. They often involved water, shared silence, and a collective decision to carry each other forward. The records are sparse, the meaning mostly speculative. But you feel it now, this isn't performance, it's practice. The storyteller speaks again. You'll carry this night with you, even when you leave. You blink. So, I will leave? He smiles. Everyone does, eventually, but some return, and all of them leave a door open somewhere else. A pause, a quiet. Then one by one the others rise. They take back their offerings, not to keep but to pass on. You retrieve the little bird, its wood wet and glistening. You press it gently in your palm, knowing now it isn't yours. It was never yours. It's just waiting for the next open table. As the group disperses, the storyteller stays behind. You linger, the bowl now still, its surface like glass. Then he says softly, "You're ready." For what, you ask? For the last part. Outside, the city is quieter than you've ever heard it. The streets glow not with light, but with familiarity. You don't see your reflection in the windows. You see your arrival, your steps, your slow undoing of fear. And you understand. This city is not about staying. It's about remembering who you were when you were finally safe enough to be yourself. You walk the empty road back toward your borrowed home. The lantern in the window flickers as if to say, "Well done." Inside on the table, one last note. Tomorrow you will leave, but you will not return alone. You fold the paper and place it under your pillow. Tonight, for the first time, you sleep with your hands open. Dawn arrives not with a trumpet, but with a whisper. It stretches slowly across the sky in quiet shades of lavender and ash gold, like fingers unfolding from a loose fist. The city wakes softly with it, as if careful not to disturb what has already been settled. You rise without hesitation. There's no packing, nothing to gather. Everything you needed has already been given, and what you've gained isn't the kind that fits in bags. You open the door, and this time you pause, not because you doubt the way forward, but because you want to remember. The feel of this doorknob, the curve of the threshold, the way light spills into the street like warm tea into a waiting cup. You step out. The city is quiet, but not watching. It doesn't perform goodbyes. It trusts that you'll know you're missed without needing to be told. Still, as you pass familiar places, small gestures meet you along the way. At the bakery, a single round loaf sits on a cloth by the window, steam still curling above it. At the fountain, the water ripples once, though no wind passes through. A child waves from a balcony, not to beckon, but to bless. And then, as you near the city's edge, you see them. The storyteller, the boy with the fig, the woman with the embroidered cloth, the man from the fountain, the librarian. They stand in silence beneath the olive trees by the low stone wall, the one that never tried to keep anyone in or out. The only wall in the city that doesn't judge you for crossing it. They don't speak. They don't move to stop you. They're just present. And then the old man steps forward, holding something wrapped in linen. He places it in your hands. When you unwrap it, you find the blank book you began filling, now bearing a title written in someone else's hand. The City Without Locks. You look up. He nods. It belongs wherever you go next. You glance at the wall, the path beyond it. It's still the same world out there, full of locks, of alarms, of small hearts with high fences. But now you carry something different. Not armor, but a seed. Something to plant, even if it takes years to bloom. You turn back one last time, and there in the doorway of the house where you first stayed, someone new stands. A traveller, shoulders tense, eyes scanning for danger. They see you. And you nod. It's their turn now. You cross the low wall, and the city doesn't vanish behind you. It settles, like a hand returning to its side after a gentle wave. The air on the other side is familiar. The path is dusted in old leaves. But something inside you is altered. Not louder, not stronger, just open. And the final thought that passes through your mind as the city drifts from view is not about what you've left behind. It's about what you're carrying forward. The memory of a door left open, a chair beside it, and no one asking why. The sky dims gently in your thoughts, and as night folds over you like a warm blanket, the rhythm of the story slows, softer now, as if whispered from a place far behind your eyes. You feel your body grow heavier in the quiet, your breath steadier, your thoughts gentler. The last image you hold is of a single candle left in a window, glowing softly, not as a beacon but as a welcome. And in that light you sleep. Still holding the key you no longer need, still listening to a city that lives forever behind the door you never had to lock. End of script. Sweet dreams.